She used to fall asleep with her head on my chest. Now she slipped away at night to call her mom, whispering under moonlight like the stars might overhear. It was supposed to be a perfect memory. A rented beach house, the salty air curling through open windows, her laughter dancing with the tide. I thought maybe, just maybe, we were healing. That the stress, the distance, the half-finished arguments, we'd left all that behind, back home. But healing doesn't sneak around corners. It doesn't whisper on balconies when it thinks you're asleep. She kept slipping away. Always at night, always alone, always saying it was her mother on the other end of the line. Her voice changed during those calls. Softer, slower, like each word was a secret, delicate, and precious. I would lie there, eyes open, listening to waves crash and wondering if she was still mine. Sometimes I imagined her voice curling through someone else's phone speaker, a man leaning back in bed, smiling in the dark. She never used to need privacy. When we were happy, she'd talk with anyone, her sister, co-workers, even her dentist, with the bathroom door wide open. Now she closed it, locked it, and every time she said, "I'll be right back," I felt a thread snap inside me. Small, invisible, but real. I didn't confront her. What would I even say? Why do you speak to your mom like you love her more than me? Why do you say his name in your sleep? I told myself I was overthinking it, that the ocean made me paranoid. But the truth was colder than the water she was pulling away. And I couldn't stop it. I could only witness it. So I watched, quietly, like someone waiting for a plane to crash but unable to scream. She smiled in photos, wore the bikini I loved, took my hand on beach walks like nothing was wrong. But her grip felt staged, like she was posing for a life she wasn't really living anymore. And I started collecting these moments, not the good ones, but the absences. The empty gaze at dinner. The pause before she said, "I love you." The way her phone never left her side, like it contained a piece of her heart she didn't want me to see. Love isn't supposed to feel like surveillance. But there I was, becoming an archivist of subtle betrayals. The worst part? She hadn't even done anything, yet. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe she was just distant. But distance has a gravity of its own. And I could feel myself circling the edge, pulled closer to a truth I wasn't ready to name. I tried to pretend we were still us. I told jokes, took photos, bought her ice cream from the little shop by the pier. She laughed, but it wasn't in her eyes. It was in her throat, sharp, practiced, like punctuation. That night, she left the bed again. The screen door creaked. Her bare feet tapped across the patio. I lay still, pretending to sleep, pretending not to hear her say, "I miss you too." Pretending the sound of my own heartbreak wasn't louder than the waves. One photo shattered the illusion, her in the same swimsuit next to someone I trusted with my life. We'd taken 100 photos that week. Sand stuck to our skin, smiles stretched wide under two blue skies. The kind of pictures that scream happiness even if they're lying. She was showing me some of them on her phone, laughing at a shot where our daughter had photobombed us mid-cartwheel. Her thumb flicked lazily, the screen blurring from image to image. Then, without thinking, she passed the phone to me. "Pick one for the frame," she said, her voice light. Too light. The moment felt innocent. Routine. But the pause, that split-second extra she took to hand me the phone, said otherwise. I should have looked away. Should have picked the photo and moved on. But curiosity is cruel. It doesn't knock. It just walks in, muddy shoes and all. And there it was, nestled between harmless memories like a splinter in silk. Her. Same black swimsuit. The one she wore the day we walked down to the rocks, and she told me the sea made her feel small in the right way. Only in this photo, she wasn't with me. She was poolside, grinning, and he was beside her. His arm was around her waist, fingers grazing her hip like a claim. Casual, confident, familiar in a way that made my stomach turn. I knew that arm. I'd helped it recover after a shoulder surgery. I'd held its owner upright after his divorce. I had trusted that arm to pull me out of a river once, during a rafting trip where we almost drowned. I thought I knew where it belonged. Apparently not. The sun was perfect in the photo. They looked golden, like they belonged on a postcard. I didn't say a word. I didn't ask why his hand knew the curve of her so well. I didn't ask when that picture was taken, before the trip? During? While I was out buying groceries or loading beach toys into the trunk. Instead, I smiled. I handed the phone back, said, "This one's nice," pointing to a photo where we both looked blurry from laughing. She smiled, relieved. Not at the photo, at my silence. Then we posed for another family shot. Her hand on my shoulder. His standing behind the camera saying, "Say cheese." I did, but I felt like I was rotting inside. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the photo, but because of how normal it felt to stay quiet. Like part of me had already rehearsed this scene. Like I'd known, deep down, that truth was circling us like a shark, waiting for just the right drop of blood. And now I'd seen it, grinning beside her, wearing my trust like a disguise. They kissed behind my back, but I kept photographing memories they didn't deserve. That evening, the light was soft, golden, forgiving, the kind of light that flatters everything, even liars. She was in the backyard with the kids, barefoot in the grass, her dress catching the breeze like it belonged in a perfume ad. The kids were chasing bubbles, their laughter bouncing off the trees. And her? She laughed too, tossed her head back like she didn't owe the world an explanation. I raised the camera, framed the shot, clicked. The image froze her mid-laugh, eyes closed, arms outstretched like she was free. But freedom, I realized, comes at someone's expense. And in this case, it was mine. Every pixel felt poisoned. I used to take photos to remember things. Vacations, birthdays, her, us. But now each image felt like a silent accusation, proof that I'd been documenting the slow erosion of my own marriage. Still, I kept clicking. Smile, laugh, hug, pose. They thought I was preserving joy, but I was building a case. I watched them when they thought I wasn't watching. Their glances, their shared jokes, the way their bodies tilted inward when they stood close, like magnets finding excuses. He wasn't even subtle, and she didn't care to correct him. It was like they were daring me to see it. So I did. She hugged him once when she thought I'd gone inside. Her hands lingered on his back. His nose brushed her neck like memory or muscle had taken over. I stood in the kitchen, camera in hand, capturing a photo of the window screen between us like a metaphor. I was always just on the other side, blurred, distant, watching a play I hadn't auditioned for. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. Some betrayals don't need shouting matches or tear-stained ultimatums. They need silence. Stillness. Observation. I started taking more photos that week. Not of landscapes. Not of the kids. But of her. Of him. Of shadows touching. Eyes lingering. That particular smile she used to save for me. And through it all, I stayed warm. Loving. Present. Because you don't catch ghosts by yelling at walls, you invite them in, offer them tea, and let them reveal themselves. I became a collector of moments she didn't think I noticed. A curator of her undoing. And every time I pressed the shutter, I wondered how many other lies had been cropped out of the frame. She thought I left for work. I left her the lens of truth. The suitcase wasn't heavy. Just a few clothes, a laptop, some chargers. Enough to make it believable. Enough to give her comfort. 3-day trip, I told her at the door, pressing a kiss to her cheek like it still meant something. She smiled too easily. Like someone exhaling after holding her breath for too long. As if my absence was a gift she hadn't dared ask for. She stood barefoot on the porch, waving as I backed out of the driveway. But I didn't drive far. 15 minutes later, I checked into a hotel off the highway. The room was sterile, beige curtains, buzzing mini-fridge, a faint smell of old cigarettes under new bleach. It felt like a waiting room for a life that hadn't started yet. I didn't unpack. Instead, I pulled up the app. 2 cameras. Motion-triggered. One in the living room, discreetly tucked into the bookshelf behind a row of untouched novels. The second hidden in the bedroom inside a hollowed-out speaker she never used. She never saw them. She never looked for them. That's the thing about secrets, you get lazy with them when you think the other person's already blind. The feed was quiet for hours. She moved through the house like a breeze, light, floaty, untethered. She danced while folding laundry. Hummed while making tea. Sat on the couch scrolling through her phone with a face I used to know. I wondered how many times I'd looked at that expression, soft, thoughtful, half-smiling, and believed it meant love. I used to trust that face. It used to feel like home. Now it looked like a mask that no longer fit. The first night passed with nothing unusual. I almost convinced myself I was wrong. Almost. But then came day 2. The front door opened at 2:12 p.m. He didn't knock. She greeted him with a whisper and a grin. No hug. No kiss. Just a hand on his chest, a familiar kind of pause, like they'd already said everything that mattered in a text hours ago. They sat on the couch for a while. Talked. Too close. His knee brushed hers. She laughed with her whole body, something she hadn't done with me in months. And then, around 3:40 p.m., they stood. Walked upstairs. Together. The feed from the bedroom camera activated seconds later. I didn't look away. I didn't scream. I didn't even blink. Because when you've suspected something long enough, the truth doesn't hurt like a knife, it lands like a confirmation. Cold. Heavy. Predictable. There was no passion. No wildness. Just two people performing a ritual of secrecy, unaware that the lens had already taken its vow. I muted the video. Not because it was graphic, but because the silence was louder. Louder than any scream. It echoed through the hotel room like a siren that never ends. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands still, my breathing even. I didn't feel rage. Not yet. Just clarity. And a strange, surreal calm, like watching your house burn down from across the street and realizing you never liked the wallpaper anyway. The alert came at 2:14 p.m. Motion detected, living room. I already knew what I'd see. The phone buzzed against the bedside table. A soft vibration. Just enough to pull my gaze from the ceiling. Motion detected, living room. 2:14 p.m. Right on time. I didn't hesitate. I opened the app. No adrenaline. No panic. Just the mechanical calm of a man watching a fire spread across a blueprint he memorized days ago. She entered first. Barefoot as always, her sunglasses pushed onto her head like she'd forgotten she was no longer outside. The white cover-up she wore, the one with the little gold threads that caught light like tiny betrayals, hung loose over her shoulders. She didn't check her phone. Didn't hesitate. She looked practiced. He followed a moment later. My best friend. My groomsman. The man who toasted our 10-year anniversary last summer like he meant every word. He moved through my house like he belonged there. Like he'd always belonged there. His shoes were off. He never liked shoes indoors. It was a thing we agreed on once, half a lifetime ago, when we still shared beers and not secrets. She turned to him. Laughed. That full-bodied, head-thrown-back kind of laugh I hadn't heard since before she stopped saying goodnight. Then she undressed. Not urgently. Not shyly. But like she'd done it 100 times. Like his eyes were home and my living room was a stage set just for them. The cover-up slid down her arms. Her swimsuit underneath was the same one from the photo, the black one with the low back and the tie she always needed help undoing. She didn't need help now. She didn't ask for permission. She just let it fall. Then he kissed her. Not quickly. Not hungrily. But with that unbearable kind of slowness, the kiss of someone who's used to getting away with things. His hands knew exactly where to go. Her fingers curled into his shirt like muscle memory. And the worst part? They didn't speak. They didn't laugh or sneak glances at the door. Because they weren't afraid. They weren't pretending. They'd stopped pretending a long time ago. I watched without blinking. Not because I was strong. Because I refused to look away from what they'd become. From what we had become. That moment, his hand on her back, her eyes fluttering closed, it was sacred to them. Desecration to me. And yet it felt familiar. Not the scene itself, but the feeling it left in my stomach. Hollow, slow-spreading, impossible to locate with words. They kissed like they owned my house. My living room. My wife. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply closed the app and sat in the silence, the words repeating in my mind like a clock that no longer told time. Motion detected. Motion detected. Motion confirmed. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply uploaded the file. There's a stillness that comes after confirmation. Not peace. Not clarity. Just a kind of emptiness that hums, low and constant, like a ceiling fan at midnight. I didn't eat dinner that night. I didn't turn on the TV or pace or scream into a pillow. I just sat in the glow of the hotel lamp, the footage paused on my laptop, her expression frozen mid-laugh, his hand exactly where it shouldn't be. It was time. I trimmed the file. Clean cuts. No flair, no commentary. Just facts. A quiet sequence of betrayal in full color. I didn't add music. Didn't add captions. The silence was the point. It said more than I ever could. Then I opened my email. Their boss first. Subject line, for your awareness. No body text. Just the file. No explanation necessary, not when your top 2 employees are violating a code of conduct in someone else's living room. Then her. His wife. The woman who once called me family. The one who trusted me with her daughter's birthday surprise last spring when he couldn't get away from work. I found her email buried in an old group message. Attached the file. Hit send. No warning. No soft entry. Just the truth handed to her like a key she didn't know she'd been waiting for. There's a specific kind of justice in quiet exposure. No confrontation. No shouted accusations in the driveway. Just air. Letting the truth breathe. Letting it expand into every corner of their lives without ever lifting my voice. I didn't need to destroy them. I wasn't building revenge. I was pulling down a mask they wore too comfortably. It didn't take long. Her boss replied within 10 minutes. One sentence. Thank you. This will be handled immediately. His wife. She didn't reply at all. But I saw the notification. Message opened. Watched again. And I imagined her there, phone clutched in trembling hands, blinking at the truth she never asked for but always suspected. No knock on their door. No drama. Just consequence, soft and steady, like rain soaking into concrete. By morning, I had dozens of unread messages from her. My wife. Some short, some frantic, a few trying for humor. One just said, "Please." I didn't open them. She wanted attention. I wanted distance. I wanted space between who I was before the video and who I had become after it. That man who doubted his gut, who took photos of ghosts and pretended they were still people. That man was gone. And now she had to live in the house where it happened, wondering which corner had seen her, which silence had been watching, which moment was the one that gave her away. Within a week, their world imploded. Mine just stood still. It happened quickly, not with drama but with efficiency, the kind that only comes when the evidence is undeniable and the masks are already slipping. They were fired on Friday. Apparently it was brutal. Someone from their office, a mutual acquaintance who didn't know what had happened, but knew enough to whisper, told me about the meeting. Legal. The owner himself. No yelling, just quiet reading of the facts. Still frames, timestamps, questions they couldn't answer. They didn't even try to deny it. What could they say? That it wasn't them? The camera doesn't lie. His wife moved out that same weekend, took the kids, left a note, I'm told. A single sentence that gutted him. "You humiliated all of us." I didn't reach out. She didn't need comfort from me. She needed distance, and I respected that. As for my wife, if that's still what I should call her, she stayed. Her body moved through the house like a wind-up version of herself. She cooked dinner she didn't eat, folded towels she never used. Every time I entered the room, her eyes would flick to the door, like she thought I might finally say something. Anything. But I didn't. I didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't ask her why. I just existed like furniture, still, silent, unforgiving. That was the worst part for her. Not the footage, not the fallout, the quiet, because you can't defend yourself against silence. You can't manipulate it. You can't cry into it or twist it into sympathy. It just hangs, unmoving, impassible, a verdict written in breathless restraint. She kept trying in small, pathetic ways, leaving out my favorite coffee mug, wearing that hoodie of mine she used to mock, leaving her phone, finally, face up on the table, like an offering to a god she no longer believed in. I ignored them all. I didn't want revenge anymore. That required energy, intention, heat. I had none of that left. I just wanted her to live inside the consequences, the same way I had lived inside the suspicion, inside the lies, inside the quiet moments where I'd once convinced myself she still loved me. Now the silence belonged to her. It wrapped around every room like smoke. No alarms, no flame, just a slow, choking awareness that everything had burned already. And I had simply walked away. She came back to me with mascara rivers and trembling hands. As if love had a reset button. She showed up just after sunset. No warning, no call. Just the quiet crunch of tires on the gravel and the hesitant knock of someone who no longer knew their place. I opened the door and found her standing there, wrapped in a coat she never liked, her makeup smudged in twin trails down her cheeks. It looked like the rain had tried to wash her clean but ran out of time. "I made a mistake," she whispered, voice splintered from sleepless nights and whatever hollow things she told herself to survive the week. "Please forgive me." She reached for my hand. I didn't move. It wasn't spite. It wasn't anger. It was recognition of something lost. Not stolen, not broken. Just dissolved. I looked at her. Really looked. The curve of her jaw. The freckle under her left eye. The scar on her knuckle from slicing lemons too fast last summer. I knew the pieces. The features. The echo of the woman I used to love. But this wasn't her. This wasn't the person I built a life with, a future with. This was a ghost of convenience. A version of her sculpted by panic and regret. A stranger wearing her shape, her voice, her perfume, but none of her warmth. She kept talking. I didn't mean for it to happen. I was lost. I thought you didn't care anymore. We can fix this. Each sentence like a key fumbling for a lock that no longer fit. And still, I said nothing. What was there left to say? That she'd ruined me? She already knew. That she'd betrayed everything we built? That part had played on a screen in front of her. Frame by frame, lie by lie, I watched her face shift. Desperation to hope to something quieter. Not understanding, just resignation. That was the first honest expression I'd seen on her in weeks. And in that moment, standing on the threshold, I realized something painful and pure. I didn't hate her. I wasn't even angry anymore. I just didn't know her. And I couldn't miss someone who'd been gone long before she ever walked out the door. The couch still smelled like her perfume. The bedroom didn't. She moved out 2 days later. No arguments. No final speeches. Just cardboard boxes stacked like unsaid apologies and the hollow sound of drawers opening without resistance. She didn't say goodbye. Not really. Just a tired nod from the hallway, keys in hand, eyes aimed somewhere near my shoes. Then the door clicked shut, and the echo felt louder than any slammed one ever could. Afterward, I walked through the house like a stranger. Not to the space, to the version of me that had lived in it. The kitchen smelled like lemon cleaner and old guilt. Her coffee mug was still on the drying rack. The one with the tiny crack in the handle she never let me throw out. I held it for a moment, turned it over in my palm, then set it back down. Not out of nostalgia, just habit. The living room was worse. The couch still smelled like her perfume. That soft, floral trace she always claimed was too sweet, but wore anyway because I once said I liked it. I sat down without meaning to, let my fingers drag along the cushion's edge. Felt the indentation where she used to curl up with her knees to her chest, saying she could never quite get warm. The air remembered her, even if I was trying to forget. But the bedroom didn't. The scent was gone. So was the color. The warmth. It felt like a display model now, carefully arranged, untouched, unlived in. I stood in the doorway longer than I needed to, like something might rise from the sheets and explain what had happened. Nothing did. I didn't cry. I thought maybe I would. That some dam would break. That I'd drop to the floor like they do in movies and wail into my hands. But the pain didn't come in waves. It came like dust. Constant. Weightless. Everywhere. So I sat. In the hallway. Between rooms. Between versions of myself. And I let the silence stretch. Not peaceful. Not healing. Just stripped. Like the house had been flayed of sound. And all that was left were echoes that didn't echo anymore. This wasn't closure. It was aftermath. And for the first time in weeks, I let the weight of it all settle into my bones. Not to break me, just to remind me that I was still here. She was still crying when I closed the door. But I wasn't. Not anymore. Some people think betrayal ends in screaming, voices cracking, doors slammed hard enough to shake the frame. But for me, it ended in stillness. Not peace. Not forgiveness. Just a kind of quiet release. Like exhaling after holding my breath underwater for too long and realizing you don't need to reach the surface. You've already let go. She stood on the porch, eyes red, mouth trembling. Some final plea lodged in her throat like it was scared to come out. I don't remember the words. Maybe I wasn't listening. Maybe they weren't for me. Just echoes she was trying to scream into a hole that could no longer be filled. I didn't yell, didn't accuse. I just looked at her. And for the first time I saw clearly. No memory lens. No nostalgia filter. No desperate reaching for the version of her I used to love. She wasn't her anymore. Not to me. She was a hollow frame. A cracked window I'd kept peering through, hoping to catch a glimpse of something warm inside. But the room had been empty for a long time. I was just the last to admit it. She cried. I didn't, because the grief had already passed through me like a storm, left its wreckage, soaked the floorboards, bent the beams, and then moved on. All I had to do was walk out of what was left. I closed the door. Not gently, not harshly, Just finally. And I didn't look through the peephole. Didn't press my ear to the wood. I didn't need to. I knew how that story ended. She was still crying. But I wasn't. I walked to the window and looked at my reflection. It didn't look heroic, or strong, or healed. Just tired. Real. A man still standing, even if a little weathered around the edges. And then I turned away. Not from her. From the version of myself that needed her. That was the real ending. Not the betrayal. Not the affair. Not the fallout. The ending was when I stopped trying to fix the window and finally walked away from the reflection.